This story is based on official reports and eyewitness accounts. And this is the story of Air Florida Flight 90. At 13:40 on January 13, 1982, in Washington, D.C., United States, the city is being held in a frigid icy grasp by a snowstorm. Air Florida Flight 90 is getting ready for a trip to Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport, with a layover scheduled at Tampa International Airport. The airplane operating Flight 90 is a Boeing 737-200 registered as November 62 Alpha Foxtrot. It was manufactured in 1969 and previously operated by United Airlines before being sold to Air Florida in 1980. The aircraft, currently 13 years old, has a captain named Larry Michael, age 34, who is in command. Captain Michael has accumulated approximately 8,300 total flight hours, with 1,700 hours specifically on the Boeing 737. According to fellow pilots, he is described as a reserved individual with excellent operational skills and knowledge, having performed well in high-pressure flying situations. However, on May 8, Captain Michael was temporarily suspended following his failure to pass a company line check on the Boeing 737. Captain Michael resumed his duties after successfully passing a retest on August 27, 1980. However, on April 24, 1981, he received an unsatisfactory grade during a company recurrent proficiency check. This assessment revealed deficiencies in memory items, knowledge of aircraft systems, and aircraft limitations. Just 3 days later, Captain Michael satisfactorily passed the proficiency recheck to address these concerns. The first officer on Flight 90 is Roger Pettit, age 31. He has approximately 3,300 total flight hours, with 1,000 of those hours accumulated at Air Florida, all on the Boeing 737. Prior to joining Air Florida, Pettit served as a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force. During his time as a flight examiner, instructor pilot, and ground instructor in an operational F-15 unit, he accumulated 650 flight hours. According to those who flew with him during that period, Pettit remained a witty and sharp individual who was aware of his limitations. According to multiple sources, First Officer Pettit was described as the type of pilot who would not hesitate to voice concerns if he noticed any specific issues with flight operations. On board Flight 90, there were a total of 74 passengers and 5 crew members, amounting to 79 individuals in total. Washington, D.C. was currently experiencing one of the most severe snowstorms in recent years, leading to the closure of National Airport on multiple occasions. At that time, only one runway was in use, and the airport had to intermittently shut down operations for snow clearing. Consequently, a significant backlog of aircraft wanting to depart or arrive in Washington was beginning to accumulate, causing delays for approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. The flight crew knew that the runway in Washington would be closed for some time, causing a delay. At around 14:20, they started de-icing the left side of the plane using de-icing fluid type 2. The captain wanted to finish de-icing just before the airport reopened at 14:30, so they could be ready to depart promptly. In 1982, there wasn't much knowledge about how long de-icing fluids could keep the snow from sticking to the wings. The ground crew started de-icing the left side of the plane, but air traffic control told them the airport would remain closed for at least 20 more minutes. They were also informed that they were 12th in line for departure. Hearing this, Captain Larry decided to stop the de-icing process because they would have to wait anyway. The crew told the passengers to get ready for departure while waiting for clearance to resume de-icing. When they heard the airport had reopened, they restarted the de-icing at 14:55, about 40 minutes later than planned. This caused a significant delay in the flight. Nonetheless, the crew kept the passengers informed and prepared for departure to minimize any inconvenience. The icing was finished by 15:10. Later, the airport reopened, and around 15:23, the crew got clearance to push back the aircraft. Due to a combination of icy conditions, snow, glycol on the ramp, and a slight incline, the tug, which lacks chains, fails to move the aircraft. In an attempt to overcome this, contrary to the flight manual guidance, the crew starts the engine and tries to use reverse thrust to back away from the gate. However, their efforts prove unsuccessful, and the aircraft remains unable to push back. Eventually, a replacement tug is brought in, and at approximately 15:35, the Boeing 737 begins to be pushed back. After leaving the gate, the aircraft joins a taxi line along with numerous other planes, resulting in a wait before reaching the takeoff runway. During this period, additional snow and ice accumulate on the wings. Despite this, the captain decides against returning to the gate for the reapplication of de-icing fluid. The concern is that doing so would further delay the flight's departure. Contrary to the flight manual guidance, they position the Boeing 737 close to the exhaust of the aircraft ahead in line, which happens to be a DC-9. 40 minutes later, after a wait of more than 45 minutes, the Boeing 737 finally becomes the first aircraft in line for departure. At 15:57, the captain and first officer proceed to complete the pre-takeoff checklist. This includes verifying the takeoff engine pressure ratio setting of 2.04 and ensuring the correct indicated airspeed bug settings are in place. Let's take a short break. We've put a lot of effort into this video, and if you find it useful and informative, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button. Your support helps us bring you more content. At 15:58, the crew receives clearance for takeoff. The first officer takes on the role of pilot flying, while the captain assumes the role of pilot monitoring. As the aircraft starts its takeoff roll, the first officer realizes that the engines are generating more thrust than anticipated. In response, the first officer reduces the engine power. However, the takeoff appears to be taking longer than usual, raising concerns for the first officer. Throughout the takeoff, the first officer expresses their apprehension to the captain 4 times, emphasizing that something is not right. Despite these concerns, the captain does not take any action to abort or reject the takeoff. During takeoff, the aircraft experiences a slower acceleration than usual, taking 45 seconds and nearly 5,400 feet of runway to reach the required liftoff speed. This is 15 seconds and almost 2,000 feet longer than the expected distance. Once airborne, the nose of the aircraft pitches up sharply. Right after takeoff, the stick shaker, a warning device indicating a potential stall, is activated. In response, the captain tries to push the nose of the aircraft down, attempting to regain control and prevent a stall. The Boeing 737 is in a descent trajectory, approaching the 14th Street Bridge over the Potomac River. Tragically, Air Florida Flight 90 collided with the 14th Street Bridge, which serves as a vital link between Washington, D.C. and Arlington County, Virginia. The impact affected 7 vehicles on the bridge and caused severe damage to approximately 97 feet of guardrail. Subsequently, the aircraft plunged through the icy waters of the Potomac River. Regrettably, only 4 passengers and 1 flight attendant were able to be rescued from the crash and survived, making this a devastating event. The devastating impact of the aircraft into the Potomac River claimed the lives of 74 individuals who were on board, including the pilots and cabin crew. Additionally, 4 individuals lost their lives on the bridge as the aircraft collided with the vehicles that were stationary there. This tragic event resulted in a significant loss of lives, leaving behind a profound impact on the affected families and the community. According to the National Transportation Safety Board investigation, it was discovered that although the aircraft had undergone de-icing, it was still covered in ice at the time of the accident. In the prevailing icing conditions, with temperatures around -4 degrees, the crew neglected to activate the engine anti-ice systems. As a result, the engine pressure ratio thrust indicators provided misleading readings. This failure to activate the necessary anti-ice systems played a role in the sequence of events leading up to the tragic accident. The NTSB investigation shed light on these critical factors contributing to the incident. Investigators proposed that the pilot's familiarity with flying in warm climates, due to their base in Florida, likely contributed to the issue. The appropriate engine power setting for the temperature and altitude should have been 2.04 EPR. However, it was later discovered that the pilots had used a lower power setting of 1.70 EPR. The investigators later discovered that both pilots had limited experience flying in snowy and cold weather. The captain had only made 8 takeoffs or landings in snowy conditions on the Boeing 737, while the first officer had encountered snow only twice. The snow on the wings melted due to the other aircraft's exhaust, but instead of falling off, it froze again on the front edges of the wings and the engine inlet nose cone during takeoff. This led to a more severe icing problem on the plane. As the plane started to take off, the first officer noticed that the instrument panel readings were not accurate and mentioned it to the captain. However, the captain ignored these concerns and proceeded with the takeoff. Investigators found that the captain had enough time and runway space to abort the takeoff but chose not to, despite the first officer being correct about the instrument panel readings. The decision to use the thrust reverser during pushback also contributed to the icing problem. This caused the engines to take in more ice, blocking the engine sensor. The investigation following the crash led to important changes in pilot training regulations, particularly addressing the failure of the captain to address crew concerns about de-icing procedures. Following the crash, airlines implemented new policies to ensure that there was always an experienced crew member on board flights. They also re-evaluated the long-standing belief that the captain had absolute authority and could not be challenged. First officers were encouraged to voice their concerns if they believed the captain was making a mistake. Despite being a successful airline that served numerous destinations in Florida, the Northeast, and the Caribbean, the company filed for bankruptcy in July 1984 and ceased operations, leading to the grounding of its entire fleet. In remembrance of the 78 individuals who tragically lost their lives in the Flight 90 disaster, we honor their memory.